for the wing that usually comes out.
That's all.
Oh, the wing.
There's usually a little wing sort of sticks out.
There.
But it's usually the other way around.
It's okay, I can see it. That's fine.
It's okay like that?
Yeah.
No. Thank you. Good. Shukriya. Alright, so this is a Shia and Tanya. It's already becoming a bi-weekly class in Sefer Tanya, and we're holding now in the middle of Perek Aleph on Amud 10, and today is Yud Beis in Faith Shalom. So we go down to that what generally speaking we find sometimes even in the Gemara that we use the word tzaddik in a general way for somebody who is what we call tzaddik b'dinoi. In other words, that he's faced with a judgment and he has good merits to support him, and he also has some negative aspects or avainos, but the good weighs over the bad, and he's sort of like in a defendable and winning position when you get to those in Yonim. So we saw that the word tzaddik is in that case for the Alter Rebbe a borrowed name. It's a name taken from the real Madrega of tzaddik to somebody who, as we just mentioned, he is righteous, tzaddik, b'dinoi. Because it's unavoidable that the word tzaddik is from the word righteousness or tzedek, correctness. So somebody who's right in his judgment, and he would be found to be defendable and even winnable of the case in his judgment, then he's also called a tzaddik. Aval, but le'inyan amitas shem hatoya, but as far as the real, genuine, truthful understanding of the name of description, because we saw that the word shem hatoya is a much higher idea than shem hamushal. Shem hamushal means it's not really the real name for that thing, and therefore it's considered a borrowed name from elsewhere. However, the Shem Hatoya is a name for somebody which describes his essence. Toya is from the word description or making clear or bringing into clear realization what is his real essence. And therefore we say Hashem Hatoya is Chacham, somebody who's wise, tells us about his essence, that he's a person who has gained great Chokmah, knows a great deal about Chokmah, or his whole being is Chokmah, Chacham, and such expressions, they're called Hashem Toya. So that he said, as far as the genuine descriptive term and the milah, the advantage, or the step, the elevation, shall milas umadregas from the level and the attainment, or the attained level, and the interdivided state or sector of tzaddikim or beinim. However, we talk about the very sense and elevation of the concept of somebody being already on a level, on a realized level, and he's already on a step which he stepped up to a interdivided state. But that, as we pointed out earlier in the Sefer here, the word chalukah means like how you're divided into your own level, in your own right, apart from, and that makes you different to other people. So all of those concepts as regards a tzaddik, as somebody who's holding by the genuine, descriptive and level and interdivided state where he's already on a madrega or on his own, but that's his madrega of tzaddik, or beinonim, or those who are not tzaddikim but at least they're beinonim, then Omer Razal, our sages said, at least in reference to the tzaddikim, Yetzer Toiv Shaitan, that they are completely, how do you call it, judged and determined only by their Yetzer Toiv, only by their good and proper instinct of their divine soul, which leads them only to good decisions and good inyanim, or they are completely dictated and judged, and in all issues they are swung, as you call it, they lean in all issues only to the Yetzer Toiv. And therefore he said somebody who wants to be on that level of a tzaddik is somebody that listens and has instructions in all aspects of his existence only from his Yetzer Toiv. Shenema, as it is written, V'libi cholol b'kirbi, as it is written, and my heart is empty inside me. Now this is a statement from David HaMelech in Tehillim, in Kapitel Kuftes, which was the Kapitel of the Rebbe last year, and we saw that in the David HaMelech describes himself over there as being in a state of libi chalal, empty. Now the word chalal is from something which has died, literally, something, a dead entity or dead person even, chas v'shalom, can be called a chalal. It also means something which has been completely emptied out, therefore it can be called a vacuum. A vacuum can also be called a chalal. An empty area can be called a chalal. In other words, that the word chalal indicates complete clean out, complete destruction of all things which might have been apart from the factor that we're talking about, or the ruling factor that we're talking about. So therefore he says, my heart, in this case, the word chalal is more like a descriptive term. My heart is empty, or in a way has been vacuumized inside me. So what does he mean by that, David HaMelech? She'ein lo yetzer hora. It means that he has only one ruling aspect of his heart. In other words, his heart is not just empty, because if your heart was just empty, then you wouldn't have what to live from. He does have a living force in his heart, and he doesn't even have a describing force in his heart, how do you call it, a determining and moral force in his heart, but it's only one, and therefore all other aspects of Kili being emptied out, and therefore in the light of that one and only thing, it's considered that his heart is empty. Sha'in loy yetzer hora, he doesn't have the evil influence anymore. His heart is empty and literally driven out from the Yetzer hora altogether. Why or how? Ki harogei betainis, because he has killed the Yetzer hora, but betainis, through fasting, through denial of himself, and through very massive and elevated self-nullification and self-effacement and self-denial, then he has killed and destroyed the Yetzer hora. Now that means then we're reaching a very new descriptive point, that a tzaddik is somebody that he no longer has the Yetzer hora. And libi cholol b'kirbi, my heart is empty inside me, means just that he's driven out all foreign entities, and he has one only living entity, which is the Yetzer Toiv. Of the Yetzer hora is gone. It doesn't have any existence anymore, And you might say, well, maybe he just pushed it down, maybe he's just keeping it dormant for the time being. Says the Alter Rebbe, no. Ki harogei pertains, he doesn't have the Yetzer Hara at all. It's been killed. He's destroyed. And literally smitten to death his Yetzer Hara. And how's he done it? Through self-denial, through time. In other words, that the word time doesn't just necessarily mean that he fasted. It means the whole idea of self-denial and of doing exactly the opposite of what the Yetzer Hara would require of you.
That's the second interpretation of Tanit?
I'm sorry?
Is that the second interpretation of Tanit?
No, it's not a second interpretation. Because there was once a famous Maisa which occurred. There was a chassid once went into the Reb Marash, and he complained of certain problems that he had in Ruchnius, and he asked the Rebbe to give him ways of correcting himself and bettering himself. So the Reb Marash said to him, you have to make 613 tiny. You have to. The simple word tiny means you have to 613 fasts. It can aid the 613 commandments. So the chassid was already sorry that he'd asked. He got a shock. 613 fasts, it's a lot of fasts. 613, it's a lot. So the Rebbe saw the heavy influence that he'd had on this chassid. This chassid was heavily shaken. So the Rebbe Marash said to him, what do you think that fasting means just not eating? He said, if you want to lose weight, then you just don't eat. He said, fasting means eating, but eating the way you should, or doing anything, but doing it in a way of kedusha and sanctity and proper conduct of Torah. He said, that's what it means to fast. He said, the implication there was that just to fast in the normal sense, that's just a way to take off weight. That's not necessarily the real meaning of the word time. So we should assume that that's what it doesn't cancel out the simple. That's for sure, that somebody who's killed his Yetzer Hara has also fasted a lot. But it means the whole idea of self-denial. And so we see here an amazing thing that it's like all things in life, that if you use something, then it gains exercise. By using a certain power, or whatever it may be that Hashem has given into us, then we develop that power. So if you, for example, you use your hands and your muscles, so then they develop and they become better, because that's what they're made for. They're made for use. That we say a lot of problems occur by people because for lack of exercise, they don't have proper exercise. But what does exercise mean? That the usage and the proper constancy of the different muscles of the body is good for the general systems. It's good in general for order. So the same thing with your mind. If you use your mind, it's written in the Siddur from the Friedrich Rebbe, that if you use your mind, your brain literally develops extra, creases in the brain, which well known that they add to the whole idea of depth of understanding. These what might look to be signs of old age in the brain are really the signs of depth. And he says that through using your brain a lot, you cause the brain to become able to understand deeper, and it actually expands. But if you don't, then it just becomes droopy, And the same with all the qualities which Hashem gave us. So the same as with the Yetzer Hara. If you use the Yetzer Hara and you give in to him and you allow him to have the say, then he becomes strong. He becomes in all aspects. He becomes dictatorial, and he wants to guide your life, and he wants to say what you're supposed to have, etc. But if you don't give him and you don't use him and you starve him away, meaning you don't give in to him, then he becomes weak and he doesn't get a chance ever to. And so what eventually occurs is that he dies off. So it's a very amazing concept that's being introduced here by the Alter Rebbe, that you can literally starve away or kill away your Yetzer Hara. In other words, by not using him and by saying the opposite, your Yetzer Hara will just become weak. He won't he won't have what to push his way, and then eventually he'll just not be there. He'll just disappear. He'll just, as it were, perish. And that's what he means. That David HaMelech harogei b'tainis. That David HaMelech smote is it's a very fascinating terminology, and it occurs in certain very rare sources. This expression harogei b'tainis, that he killed him. What it means is he took away all his chayes by not using him and not giving in to him. He took away all his chayes, and therefore, since he has nothing to do anymore, the Yetzer Hara, he just gradually withers away and he disappeared. So there, Ava, kol mi shelo higia l'madrega zu. Somebody that he didn't reach such a level as that, as having killed his Yetzer Hara, af sheschuyosav marubim alavinosav. Even if his merits will be much more than his sins and his iniquities, einoi b'mailas, he's not in the elevational state, madregas and level of a tzaddik klal at all. He's not at all klal in that, says the Alter Rebbe. V'lochein, we'll soon come to that in a second, but v'lochein we're going on. So here we see that the Alter Rebbe is very heavy. He said somebody who hasn't completely driven out and destroyed, or the expression murdered, his Yetzer Hara, he is absolutely not on the madrega or the level in a definitional and proper conceptual term of a tzaddik at all, klal. So it would seem to me that with that, the Alter Rebbe, by having written in that word klal, and having written it in such a way, the Alter Rebbe put down here an amazing thought that when it comes to in Ruchnias, you must never deceive yourself, and you must never allow yourself to be deceived. That maybe you're holding on certain levels, but it could be you're not really holding on, and therefore it's a serious error to listen, like we saw at the beginning of the whole Sefer, where he brought the Gemara that even if the whole world says to you that you're a tzaddik, so who's this whole world? I mean, who's the whole world that's going to be? The whole world's running around saying to you, listen here, man, you're a tzaddik. The Kavanah is that your world and all the things in your life make you appear to yourself to be a tzaddik. You think you're a tzaddik. So therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, if you haven't reached that madrega of harogei b'tainis, you haven't got what to talk about. You are absolutely not on that level. Absolute, which is a very strict way of saying, look, don't mix into madrega, don't assume that you have levels which you don't have. Therefore, it's one of the great praiseworthy things about Chassidim, particularly from those who learn Tanya, that they don't hurry to assume that they've reached levels. Because to reach a level, particularly when you get into the league of tzaddikim and beinim, and you've got to realize that you're playing with very high and elevated ideas, but they are mailas and madregas. They're very elevated states, and they're levels in elevation. And don't kid yourself, says the Alter Rebbe. In other words, even if the whole world says to you, then don't listen. You have to know klal at all. You're not on that, and it would imply, as we said, that you're not on the level of Beinin either, but we're going to come to that. We've still got a lot more to have to say about that. So, on that basis, it would seem then that, but just by the way, it's interesting here that we're talking here for the time being to give you some idea of the Maila and Madrega and Chaluka of a tzaddik, is that we're talking here about that he's destroyed the Yetzer Hara. Now that's a negative terminology. Harogei, Patain is you've starved out or completely wiped out your Yetzer Hara, but you're sort of described in the pasuk as being empty or vacuumed. What do you do now with that vacuum? What do you put in there? What in place of the Yetzer Hara? So therefore, the tzaddikim, they reach tremendous madrigas that after they've already killed and destroyed, wiped out the Yetzer Hara, then they build in tremendous levels inside that of Avos Hashem and dveikis in Hashem, and keeping knowledge of His Torah on a tremendously high level, but particularly the idea of the heart, love and fear of Hashem in very, very high madrigas. So here we have to say that the Alter Rebbe is just giving us the basic negative first requirement of a tzaddik. This is not really the ultimate level of a tzaddik, because for the time being, he's only starting off at scratch. He's made an emptiness in his heart. And even that is an unbelievable achievement. But what will be later in the heart, you put in Avos Hashem and Yiras, love of Hashem and fear of Hashem in very, very high levels, that will come on a later stage, which makes the tzaddik even more moving up into a untenable, into something beyond and completely beyond the reach of what you might call the normal man, or the man who still hasn't a rogi b'tainis. And therefore the Alter Rebbe, at the moment, we can be described as only giving us the negative immediate requirement of a tzaddik. When he says a rogi b'tainis, despite the tremendous elevation of that, but that's only the minimal beginning requirement, as we might say, of the tzaddik. So, being that the case, says the Rebbe, Lochein Omer Azal b'Medrash. Lochein, our sages said in the Medrash, Roh HaKodesh Baruch Hu b'tzadikim sheheim mu'atim. So he said, now we'll understand what our sages said in the Medrash. We'll soon see what sort of Medrash that is. That the Eibishter saw b'tzadikim that they are few, mu'atim, they are few. So in the light of what we just said, it says the Alter Rebbe Lochei, therefore, to completely destroy your Yetzer Hara, to have just an empty a vacuum ready for Kedusha. And just by the way, they say that there was once by the Rebbe that someone tzedek happened a story. Once the Rebbe that someone tzedek was sitting with Hasidim, and he was like a Bremen with a big oilon, and all of a sudden the Rebbe that someone tzedek spoke about the madrega of tzedek and libi chorol b'kirbi. They have to completely get rid of all other Indians, start all over again from an empty and vacuum situation. And it wasn't usual for the Tzom Tzaddik, because he wasn't usually given to such things. He jumped up on the table and he began to dance on the table. So all the people that were there, the Hasidim, were amazed. What was this? So the Tzom Tzaddik said that once you've begun with Libi, with Libi, Cholav B'Kirbi, and you've reached that, and you've murdered the Yetzer Hara, he's not there anymore, you don't have to worry. Oh, he said, then it begins a whole new life. He said, then the life is a completely new one, a new and different type of life. But then you start pulling, as I said, you start pulling into the vacuum all sorts of tremendous and amazing ideas of Avos Hashem. So we see that this was like a very modest way of admitting to all the Chassidim that he'd reached that level, that someone tzedek, and he jumped up on the table and he danced. He said that this is the beginning of a new life. It's like
How does a person know that? How does a person know that?
Oh, so you see, let's put it this way. Negative things you can know. When I say negative, the results which are measured by negative quantities, that you can know. Positive results which involve tremendous filling of the vacuum, well, that maybe it's a little bit hard to know how what level you've reached already. But to know that you've already destroyed the Yetzer Hara and that he's not bothering you anymore, That you can know, that, I mean, I'm not saying that people of our level would be able to know, but somebody who's already reached that level, and he's no longer bothered by the Yetzirah cloud in any detail, he would know. He would know that that's not his problem anymore. The temptation towards any form of evil, or any form of having a geschmack in the evil, that which is not proper, he would not have anymore, and that he would know. Because something that you really yourself of, that you could know. Yeah, but to build in very, very high levels, and to bring in things which are given to further uncalculable and unfathomable levels, that we can say it's very difficult. But later on we'll see in Parak Yud, the Alter Rebbe gets pretty close to giving us some way, even in that, of having some idea of what would be a tzaddikum. But having known that you've got rid of the Yetzirah altogether, completely, that would appear that you're able to know. From that Mazal Tato, the Rebbe said now that Libi, Chorov, Kirbi now begins a whole new
Can somebody have that clean heart and still be angry at sometimes?
Oh, so it's in the Gemara. So that's a good question. In the Gemara, if a real member of the rabbis, meaning the great teachers of the Gemara, if they get angry, then it's not that they are angry, but the Torah inside them is angry with something. You follow?
Yeah.
You got the idea? That's what's written in the Gemara. In other words, they don't get angry, but the Torah inside them protests at something. And that's why when the Rebbe became very, very angry about the situation here in Israel, about Yehudi, the whole idea of Yehudi and others, and then you can see the Rebbe spoke, and he spoke with tremendous sharpness, but it wasn't him personally attacking anything or anybody. It was just unbelievable complaint of the divinity inside the Rebbe coming out.
Same thing with Abner, when he got angry at David, at King David.
Yeah, it's the same basic idea. Yeah, that by these great people, it was the inner divinity and the inner possession that they had of Torah. That's what protested, or not that they personally protested. Okay, so he says, Lochem, and therefore, Omer Azal b'Medrash, Lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu She'ein Mu'atim, Hashem saw about the tzaddikim that they are very few. In other words, how many people could we really assume have reached this level of harogeba attainments, that they've completely withered away and killed the Yetzirah? How many people? This is obviously, and that's what he said, somebody who hasn't reached that level, he's not on that level at all. So we have to say then that such people are few. And what did Hashem do? He saw that they're few. Omod v'shotlan b'chol der v'der. HaKadosh Baruch Hu stood up literally, and he sprinkled them out in every generation and generation. Shotlan means, how do you call it? He sprinkled them here and there.
Planted. Planted? Planted.
Plastic?
Planted.
Planted, yes. It's the idea of a shatil. A shatil can be described as a small thing that's been planted. But it means that he sort of put them here and there. That's the kavanah. So therefore, he made them, spread them out in every generation. And Rashi writes over, now this is a Gemara in Masechta Yuma, in the 38th page on Daf Ram Ches Amud Beis. So over there, Rashi says a very beautiful one. Rashi states that Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shochem B'chol Der V'der Pizer. He spread them out, says Rashi. He spread them out over the generations, that they should be a holding force and a yesod, and a basis for the world. And the Gemara brings a very beautiful pasuk there. Ki mi Hashem yitzukei eretz, ki Hashem yitzukei eretz, vayoshes aleihem teva, and the literally the holders of the world, or those who support, are few, and Hashem spread them out. What was the expression over there? V'yoshes aleim tevel, and he's literally stood and founded the world upon them. That's what Rashi said. So that's the whole idea. That we see then that not only they have Lefi Zeh, according to Rashi's interpretation of the Gemara, not only they're few, and therefore they have to be spread out over the generations. What was the purpose of spreading them out over the generations? Because these people are founders of the world. They call it they're founders of Yiddishkeit. And they're founders of Torah, and in other words, that the world rests upon them and stands on them. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to have a few of them in the world to literally to be holding up the world. And therefore but since there's only a few of them, what's he going to do? Therefore he has to put them, he has to fractionize them throughout the different generations, put them at different times plant them literally and spread them at different times. But Dafki, because they're few, however, they have this foundational function whereby everything rests upon them. And that's what the Gemara goes, that's what the Old Torah now continues. U'kumeishikosu, and it is written, V'tzadik Yeseid Oilam. And this bases up the point we just made. And it is written, and the tzaddik, he is the fundament of the world. Now, notice a minute before, the Alter Rebbe spoke in the plural. He said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw in the tzaddikim that they're few, and he spread them throughout the generations and so on. And now he brings a posik, which is a posik in Mishlei, V'kameshikosu, V'tzadik Yesod Oilam, but that's already in the singular, implying kilo, and he is the fundament of the whole. He's the fundament of the whole. So it's interesting. If you look at the Gemara over there, then the Gemara brings the first one that we just mentioned. Hashem spread them out to all the generation, and then it's written. I think as Rav Chia says that Motza Kodesh Baruch Hu Shafilu Tzadik Echad Shekedai Kol Olam Afilu Tzadik Echad. The Gemara notices that there's another passage which says that Kilo Tzadik, and the Gemara itself says that, but the truth is, Rav Chia adds that the whole world is worth one tzaddik. One tzaddik, he can be the whole basis of the world. In other words, that even if there's in that generation, they're not really any more of the real tzaddikim, one tzaddik can do it. And it would imply almost as if he's adding, and he's saying that even if you do have these other tzaddikim, but there's one tzaddik which can be considered at any given point in the development of the world, he can be considered the Yesoid Oilam. And that's a pasuk in Mishlei, the Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Now, it's very interesting over there that the way the Gemara is learning that pasuk, because if you look in the pasuk over there in its simple term, it's written that if a sufa, how do you call it, a tornado, like in America, if a tornado hits the world, then if God forbid they're Roshoim, then the Roshoim get swept by the tornado and everything. A tzaddik is Yesod Olam. A tzaddik, he doesn't get swept by the tornado. So the Mitzvahs Tobin and some of the other great simple interpreters of the verse, they say that a tzaddik is like the fundament of the whole world, that he never moves. Tornadoes don't blow him around, he moves. He doesn't move, I'm sorry. He remains in his place, and that's how quite a number of the great Meforshim learn over there. In other words, a real tzaddik, he's like the reality and fixedness of the whole globe that never moves. And the whole globe, Chas v'Shalom, doesn't move. Storms and that make other things move, but not attack. However, the Gemara touches it differently. Instead of that simple verse which you just brought, here in the Gemara, he says that Yesod means not only just the function of the world, in the sense that that which is the basic part of the world never moves. He said Yesod Olam means like the fundament of the world. The fundament of the whole world can be one tzaddik. Now it's very interesting that the Alter Rebbe brings that Hemshech here. He brings, the Alter Rebbe says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu spread them in every generation. It's much more in the plural. And then without bringing the Lashon of the Gemara anymore, the Alter Rebbe just says, Ukameish Kasu, V'tzadik Yesod Olam, and he quotes the Pasuk, without bringing the further Maimon Chazal. It would appear that the Alter Rebbe is learning that what the Eibishter placed them in every generation. It's enough one if he's the real McCoy. How do you say, if he's the real tzaddik that we are interested in, then he can support the whole world. And it's enough one tzaddik. You don't need any more. There could be the Terah more. Or the Yesod Olam, the one who really holds the whole world. Kipshuti is one. And if you look in the Hemshech, the way the Lashon runs, he didn't really need to put that last piece in. It was enough to say, I want B'Shotlam. And then he said, Kumeish Kosu, Tzadik Yesod Olam, without any further quotation from the Gemara. He just puts that in. Obviously, the Alter Rebbe is hinting that in the Shotlan itself, in the planning, it's enough one. If he's the right tzaddik, it's enough one, and he can support the whole world. He can be the foundation of the whole world. So the great Chabad Chassidim over the generations, they've always been a little bit one track minded to Chabadskis. And they have learned from here that the Alter Rebbe says clearly that there's tzaddikim in a generation could be a given number. We don't know how many, and they're great people, and it's not about it. They're holding on to genuine madrigas, but then there's another type of tzaddik that he's mamish, he's one, and he's the Yesod Olam, and he's ki'ilu, he's like the consummation of the whole spreading out of the tzaddikim. In other words, like you need to have one that he's the whole basis, and then he's also assisted, or there's other tzaddikim also around him. This is the famous Chabad interpretation that's been given to that statement by the Alter Rebbe. The final opinion that the Alter Rebbe reaches is that such people for sure are few, and they need to be spread out because there's not enough of them to go around all over. But even more than that, there's another type of tzaddik that he just not reached a tremendously high level of harogi b'tainis, but he's reached a level whereby without him the world can't be. In other words, that the whole world rests on him and stands on him, and he takes that on himself, and that's his inyan. That's his whole inyan, to be like the fundament of that particular generation and that particular time in history, however long it may be. He is the Yesod Olam. And that's his inyan. He's inyan, not just all these tremendously high levels without which you can't possibly reach a level of tzaddik, but he's more than that. His whole inyan is Yesod. And like Rashi learned in the other tzaddikim, they're also a form of a Yesod. But this one, his whole inyan, tzaddik, Yesod Olam, that's what he is. His whole inyan is that. And therefore, how do you say, with all modesty and all respect, as they say, the Chabadskis say, other great tzaddikim, that's for sure. But there's one tzaddik that he's, and we see it, and you can see, without being too audacious as a Chabadski, we see that if we take, for example, the Rebbe, we see that the Rebbe is very, very different even though there are other great leaders, very, very great people that led Yiddishkeit all over, in America and all over the world, but the Rebbe was just, he didn't live in any other way but just to be like the supporter of the world. And all his seekers, his ways of speaking show it. He spoke about topics which other great leaders never spoke about at all. He, as it were, he tried to save the decisions that get to how you should decide in the fate of their lives in the world, and when they get to this country, to Israel, and to all the things that Rebbe took upon himself, and he spoke with clarity and with instruction, which obviously was divine. And that's what's so unusual about the Rebbe. Like I pointed out, I think in one of these classes a few days ago, that when the Rebbe was receiving people to comfort him after the passing of the Rebbe, one of the great rabbis from Boropath took aside Leibel Gurman, and he said, "Listen, you guys," he said, "this is the way you look after your Rebbe, you let him live like this, because the Rebbe's house was very, very, very simple, and even had peeling wallpaper, and a simple wooden floor, and the Rebbe's room upstairs, where the Rebbe actually, as it were, spent his time privately, but just had no cupboards in it, the Rebbe had no time for anything. All his foreign that he used to stand on the floor, on piles, he just had a desk in the middle." The Rebbe just never, there was no personal existence that he had of his own. He didn't care. And when they bought him a new car, you know the whole story, they bought the Rebbe a beautiful new car. It was in, what year it was, I can't remember the year now, but around about the time of the Stalkers of the Rebbetzin. It's Rav Guadia, what was his name, Zalman Guadia, he was a Yiddish. As he bought a beautiful new car for the Rebbe, because the Rebbe's car, they used to take it in the winter, every morning after the Rebbe had arrived, they took it to the garage to have it treated so that it would start the next day. Oh yeah, it was an old car. By American standards, it was an old car. And they had to treat it every day to make sure it would start the next morning. So, Rav he said, enough of all this. We have to buy the Rebbe. So he bought a beautiful big limousine, and it had amazing sort of a thing. When you opened the back door, the front door, the seat also moved out, and the Rebbe would have been able to just sit on the seat, and the whole thing would have just taken him back in and closed automatically, and the whole thing was really a beautiful vehicle, a beautiful car. And the Rebbe refused to take it. The Rebbe said he doesn't want it, he doesn't need it. And he said my car is a good car. The Rebbe said, my car is a good car. He said it served me up till now, and it'll serve me later. I don't need these whole washing. So he said to Rabbi Guardia, he said to him, "You want to give out money like that?" He said, "Take and give it to tzedakah. Give it away for charity. You don't need it." He said, "I don't need that." And so the Rebbe continued using this old, what the world considered an old car. It was, it was a nice looking car from the outside, but it was old. The Rebbe refused. And the Rebbe, Rabbi was terribly disappointed and broken. He got on board this building. He thought the Rebbe would say, "Oh, thank you, this is really great." No. So that's the Indian of Tzaddik Yisod Oilom, that his whole in is only to be the foundation of the world. He has no other. And therefore, because of that, the world rests upon him. So there's takia a necessity for there to be the spreading of tzaddikim, because there are few, but there's a one tzaddik that he's even better. I want to say better. He's more deeper in the sense that he doesn't just kill his yetzer hara and build on that also, but his whole function is to be not for himself, period, only to be the function of the founder and the foundation stone of the world at that particular time.
So if that's the case, then it's the same with the Russia. So there's one Russia that wants to destroy the world, right?
Well, I don't know if we have to say that, but unfortunately, I suppose in a way we do. And then unfortunately, That's what we saw with certain Roshoi, yeah. But you have to realize that Stalin was much worse than Hitler. Stalin was much worse than Hitler. And the Rebbe brought Stalin down. The Rebbe brought him down. By bringing, the Rebbe said he's pagan, and they found that the Rebbe brought him down. So the Rebbe will bring down the scale, so don't worry, and the Rebbe will bring them all down. They're not going to have any place, and they can't have any place. And all we have to do is just be strong in our discussions to the Rebbe, and then we got everything. Tzaddik, Yesod, Oilon. It's a whole further consummation of the level of tzaddik.
Yechi Adonenu Morenu Rabbeinu Melech
Mashiach
HaMashiach.
Le'olam. Good few more.
Rabbi?
Pause.
No?
This is only a pause. It's not an end. It's only a pause.
So the